Let's get the first state reaction from the budget now. The New South Wales Treasurer, Matt Kean, joins us live from Sydney. Matt Kean, I'm sure you've pulled through all the budget papers, thousands of pages. What are your initial thoughts?
Laura, I'm very disappointed. I mean, the families of Australia have been let down by the Albanese government, who have left them to fend for themselves when it comes to cost of living. In the budget papers we saw last night, the electricity bills are expected to increase by up to 50%, largely due to the war in the Ukraine, which is driving up the cost of coal and driving up the cost of gas. That feeds through to wholesale electricity prices. And whilst the Albanese government campaigned on reducing energy prices for households, they delivered very little in the budget last night, forcing families to fend for themselves across the country. This is a national crisis and it requires a national response. The New South Wales government, which only has a budget a small part of the size of the Commonwealth government, delivered almost as much in cost of living savings to families for New South Wales as the Commonwealth government just did for the entire nation. It's not acceptable, and again, it's leaving families to have to fend for themselves.
So what should it have done when it comes to the soaring cost of energy? Are you talking about direct payments or subsidies?
Well, there are a number of things that the Commonwealth Government could have done that could have assisted families with their electricity bills and not fed the rate of inflation. But let's not forget, Laura, inflation is largely being driven by increases in energy bills because that feeds through into other parts of the economy.
What are you suggesting?
So
what should they have done?
Downward pressure on that. Well, what we've done in New South Wales is our Energy Bill Buster program, which ensures that people can upgrade their appliances to energy efficient appliances, saving up to $600 a year on their energy bills. That's one way you can support families whilst lowering cost of living pressures and also not drive inflation because it's a productivity enhancing measure. So there are a number of schemes that could be done, but I'm disappointed that the Albanese government has abandoned the families of Australia when it comes to cost of living pressures.
Okay, gas is a big problem here. We've got plenty of it. We export most of it. Manufacturing and jobs rely on it. What is the solution here? Because you talk about renewables. This current Labor government talk about renewables being the cheapest source of energy. They are, but do you accept they aren't right now?
Yes, I absolutely accept that. In the longer term, we've got a plan to transition, but in the short term, you need to ensure that our coal-fired power stations are able to provide affordable electricity, and our gas power plants can also provide affordable electricity. Right now, the price of gas has gone through the roof. Coal prices have gone from almost $50 a tonne to around $600 a tonne. That's feeding through to household electricity bills.
Doesn't that mean the transition and Labor, and to an extent you, are talking about this move away from gas too quickly? I mean, again, we go back to this idea. We've got plenty of gas in this country, plenty of gas in New South Wales. We're just not using enough of it.
Well, you're not going to do the transition overnight, and what's feeding electricity prices is the price of gas and the price of coal. So in the long term, the way to drive down electricity prices is to transfer to renewables, which is exactly what the Commonwealth is doing, and it's a position that New South Wales is obviously working towards as well. But that's not dealing with short-term electricity bills, which are being driven up by the price of gas and the price of coal. So families need short-term relief, and what we saw from the budget last night is that the Albanese government is leaving the families of Australia to fend for themselves when it comes to electricity prices.
Okay, so Narrabri, that could be part of the solution. Does that need to be expedited?
Well, we are expediting here in New South Wales, and better still, we've said that the gas coming out of Narrabri will be reserved for New South Wales families and businesses. And what we need to be looking at is a national solution to this problem. There's plenty of gas in Queensland, there's plenty of gas in Western Australia, there's plenty of gas in Victoria, and I don't know why the federal government is not saying that that gas should be used here for the benefit of Australian families and Australian businesses.
There's not plenty of gas in Victoria. I mean, they should do more of the heavy lifting, shouldn't they?
Well, where those states that have plentiful supplies of gas, that's Western Australia, that's Victoria, and that's Queensland, should be reserving that gas and prioritising Australian families and Australian businesses rather than offshoring it and making super profits because of the war in Ukraine. That just makes common sense. And what we've seen is no plan from the Albanese government to support families when it comes to cost of living and particularly energy bills.
Would you do direct payments if you were the Federal Treasurer?
Well, if I was the Federal Treasurer, we'd be looking at a range of things to support cost of living pressures for families, but particularly with electricity bills. Electricity bills have been driven up by the high price of coal and the high price of gas. And that's because that's shipping it offshore, not to the benefit of Australian energy users, but to the benefit of international energy users. We've got to make sure that we're protecting Australian families and businesses first.
All right, let's talk about this housing accord from Jim Chalmers last night. He says all the relevant levels of government and industry bodies are on board with this. This is about building 1 million new homes over 5 years from 2024. Are you on board with it? Did you have discussions with Jim Chalmers? Have you signed anything?
We certainly are on board with this. I congratulate Treasurer Chalmers for this initiative. It's an important initiative and it feeds right into what the New South Wales government is already doing on housing. However, housing is important, but so is the infrastructure to support it. And what we saw last night is Treasurer Chalmers chop $1.7 billion worth of infrastructure spending for New South Wales. So New South Wales taxpayers were robbed last night when it comes to the infrastructure required to support new housing in our state. It's not fair, and it just shows that the Labor government doesn't care about New South Wales.
Matt Kean, we'll leave it there. We will speak soon though. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks as always, Laura.